Hey everyone, Gaprogman from .netcore.gaprogman.com here. I'm coming in a little bit too loud, so I'm going to turn that down. So that it doesn't blow your ears out. Okay, so what I thought I'd do is today I gave a talk on Blazor. I'm pointing over there, and what's actually happening is it's appearing down there. I've got the slides over here, you see. So what I thought I'd do is I'd run through some of the edited slides, so that I took out something, the stuff that was specific to the group of people I was talking to, and give you a quick introduction to Blazor. When I did this earlier on, it was about 45 minutes long, so you may need about 45 minutes. Hopefully I'm not going to waffle too much. Although I do tend to waffle sometimes when I get a bit stuck or get a bit tired, and it is currently 11 o'clock at night here, so wish me luck. Right, so let's put this water down. Sorry about that. Actually, I'll put it on the floor. There we go. So Blazor, right, what is it? So Blazor, oh yeah, before we start, I've already written about Blazor on my blog, .netcore.gaprogman.com. If you go to this bit.ly link, it will take you there. Obviously you're watching this as a video, so you can't click the link. I'll put a link in the show notes, in the description below, and I'll also put a link, because what I usually do is I put the video onto the blog. I'll put a link to that blog post. Excuse me 1 second. Excuse me. And this blog post, this one, I don't know where it is. I've not got the screen on. It's about 3,000 words long, and it takes you through what Blazor is, how it works, and the beginning of creating a useful app. It's the app that I'm going to show you at the end of the talk. So definitely check this out. Okay, right. So what is Blazor? It's brand new technology. Well, I say brand new. So it was shown off last year. We'll come to that in a moment. It is basically, it runs in .NET Assembly. It is .NET for the browser, running in .NET Assembly, which is really cool. Last year, the year before, the idea of running full .NET on a Mac, or that was really loud, on a Mac or on a Linux machine was, it wasn't unheard of, but it was pretty out there, and the fact that Microsoft were doing it was pretty out there. Now we have .NET running in the web browser, and Microsoft are doing it, which is really cool. You will need, I'll come on to what you need to be able to do Blazor development later, but you will need ASP.NET Core 2.1 to be able to do it. As I record this, Preview 2 came out 3 days ago. So for context, part of this talk requires me to talk about, yesterday, 2 days ago. So for context, today is Friday the 13th of April, and I'll try and change it from last week to on this date. Okay, so back to the slide. So Blazor is currently at version 0.1, and that's fine. So it is really, really, really early technology. Yeah, it's a minor version release. Yeah, so anything you do with it has to be with the mindset of this is an experiment, this is preview, this is early. It also means that the next version 0.2 is due out very, very soon. Because of that, things are going to change. So part of what I'm about to say in this video is probably going to change when 0.20 comes out. It was originally due out in a week, but you'll see that certain things have happened and it's changed the schedule. So how new is Blazor? Well, it's not really that new. It's based on work done by Chris Donnell on .NET Anywhere. I'll have a link to the original repo that's on a GitHub repo. I'll have a link. Everything I talk about I will link in the show notes, so I'll stop saying I'm going to link in the show notes. So around August 2010, Chris Donnell started a project called .NET Anywhere with the goal of running .NET in the browser, with this then brand new idea of technology running, compiled stuff in the browser, compiled cross-platform compiled stuff. That's a bit mad. Chris Donnell worked on this for about 2.5 years, and then it went stagnant for 6 years. At some point, so it went stagnant for about 6 years. So the last commit of code was on January 23rd, 2012. At some point after that, Steve Sanderson of Knockout.js and the ASP.NET Core SPA services fame found it and ran with it. And what he did was he showed off an early demo of a project he was working on at NDC Oslo 2017. Yep. So here is a very, very vague timeline with only a few key moments on it, and it is definitely not to scale. So August 2010, .NET Anywhere is committed to GitHub. 2017 March time, around March 2017, WebAssembly 1.0 is released. I'm going to turn that down a little bit more because I need a pop filter. So yeah, WebAssembly 1.0 is released in March 2017. At some point after this, or maybe it was slightly before, I don't know. I'm not Steve Sanderson, so I don't know. Hey Steve, if you do know, send me an email and let me know. Steve discovers Steve discovers .NET Anywhere and decides, hey, this is pretty cool, but it's been, left in the dust. At which point, somewhere between there and May 25th, Steve Sanderson decides, I'm going to make this new project called Blazor. On March 25th, he makes the initial commit to a new project under his name in his GitHub. Then, in summer 2017, at some point between May 25th and summer 2017, something must have happened internally at Microsoft that make everyone on the ASP.NET team go, wow, this is amazing. What can we do? So they had a very public, open hackathon. I've got a link. Again, I'll put links everywhere, but I've got a link to the GitHub, and you can see all of the issues that came in and all of the changes and commits that came in. At some point in the summer, they had a week-long, I think it was, hackathon. And if you go back in the ASP.NET the ASP.NET community stand-ups, there is actually an episode that they did when Damien Edwards was at the hackathon, was working on some stuff and talking about new ASP.NET Core stuff. So that's pretty cool. Then in June 2017, Steve Sanderson gives his now famous Blazor an Experiment video. So that's pretty cool. September 3rd, 2017, 6 years after the last commit, Chris Donnell officially gives up support for .NET Anywhere. He officially abandons the project. March 22nd, 2018, the public preview of Blazor is announced. That's version 0.10, sorry, that's the version I'm running on my machine as I do this talk. It's the version that I've built my apps with. So, that's cool. March 27th, 2018, only a few days later, I hosted an internal hackathon/lab at the place where I work using Blazor. There were a few of us stayed after work and we did some work with Blazor. I handed out some demo projects I've been working on. We had some pizza. We watched some soccer/football. If you're a UK person, you can figure out what game was on by looking at the date there. And then April 3rd, 2018, I bring this one up because this one is really cool. Dan Roth, Steve Sanderson were on the ASP.NET community stand-up and they showed off Blazor and talked about how it worked. And then today, because, it's useful to have an anchor to put you somewhere on a timeline. Although if today was in the middle, I'd be a bit worried. So how does Blazor work? Right. Before I do that, I just want to talk you through a quick reminder of what the .NET standard is and what it isn't. A couple of times ever since Emo Landworth and his team announced .NET Standard, people seem to misunderstand. I don't know whether it's, or rather misinterpret. I don't know whether it's I don't know whether it's the way that Microsoft have put it across, whether it's something in the documentation that's not quite right. But the idea is .NET Standard is a standard document. It's not a format. It's not a platform. These things down the left-hand side. So if I just take my mouse and go, where are we? These things down the left-hand side These are .NET compatible platforms. So these things implement the standard. So you can see .NET Core versions 1 to so .NET Standard version 1 to 1.6 are implemented in .NET Core version 1. In .NET Core version 2, it implements .NET Standard 2. You can see here with .NET Framework 4.5 implements .NET Standard 1 and 1.1. .NET Framework 4.5.1 implements 1.2. .NET Framework 4.6 implements 1.3, and so on until you get to the end. Now you can see these scratches out here. This is because it's, that's how it's presented in the table. And the same can be said with Xamarin, the UWP, and Mono. It's very important. Remember Mono. I'm going to come back to it. You can see it implements the .NET Standard almost all the way across, which is very important for what I'm about to say. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to come out of my Google Chrome. Whoops. I'm going to come out of my slides, and I'm going to show you. Let's have a look. Let's see whether that's still displaying. Oh, bother, where are we? Oh, I've lost you now. Jamie, cut this bit out. Hide. Let's go full screen. Desktop 1, desktop 2. I can't find. Oh, right. Obviously, there it is. Sorry about this. Right, Jamie, cut that bit out. There we go. So, you can see that. That was a huge waste of time. So, I've come out of the slides, and I'm going to show you two things. Oh, well, that didn't work. I'm going to show you two things, right? So I'm going to show you this gist, which was written by David Fowler, who's one of the people on the ASP.NET Core team. I believe he's .NET Core, but he works for Microsoft. And this is an example showing off how the .NET Standard relates to .NET platforms. As you can see, he's created an analogy. Let me go full screen so you can see this and zoom in a little bit. Let me zoom in, zoom. Is that better? That looks better on my screen, right? So you can see here that he said, I've created an interface called iNet Standard 1, which has these methods. I've created iNet Standard 1, which extends iNet Standard 1.0, which includes these, and so on and so forth until we get to iNet Standard 1.4. Then you can see iNet Frameworks, the interface for .NET Framework 4.5 implements .NET Standard 1.1, which means it gets all of these things that were defined up here, right? The same with 4.5.1, it implements those two things, it implements 4.5 and it implements 1.2, and it goes all the way down to like Mono and UWP. It's definitely worth reading through this if you are at all confused about what .NET Standard is. There's also shout out here to my mate Paul Seal, who is a pretty cool dude. Just scroll up. Right. He wrote this. So this was, oh goodness, when was this? Let me scroll a little bit and find out. I don't think he dates his posts. No, he doesn't. Okay, but this was last year sometime, and he wrote about what the .NET Standard is. And his example is TVs and satellites and things like that, right? So that's his example there. So I'll just highlight that so you can give that a read. So the idea is, Paul Seal's analogy is, think about the cables that you run to your TV. You've got an RF cable, you've got HDMI, you've got a SCART cable, you've got component cables. All of these cables implement certain standards. And it's the standards that they implement are what .NET Standard is, if that makes sense. They're all carrying essentially the same, not the same data, but the same information, but it's all sent as slightly different formats in the data, if that makes sense. So definitely check this out. It's in the show notes. Definitely read through Paul's blog, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the slides. I'm going to come out of full screen, and I'm going to go back to full screen here, just because. And I'm going to leave all of that in because it's worth it, right? Okay, so it's important that you remember that mono is a thing, right? Right. So how does Blazor work? Blazor works, and I'm going to have lost my notes. Oh, bother. Let's go back a page. Let me just get my notes up so that I remember what my notes are. There we go. And then we'll hide this. Right. Put this into full screen. Oh, dear. I'm not usually this bad, but I'm going to leave all of that in because it's useful. Right, how does Blazor work? Well, basically, it loads WebAssembly. WebAssembly creates a mono environment, mono loads your DLL loads its dependencies, and boom, it just works. Kinda. Here's the bit that I feel some of the people who know about this video are gonna be most interested in. This is when I explain Blazor and how it works with Pokemon. So, first of all, you have an ASP.NET Core middleware called Use Blazor of type T. What you do here is you pass in, instead of so you call Use Blazor of type T, and you pass in your program.cs for the application that you want to boot in place of T. Right? The ASP.NET Core middleware in the second generation, the second step, looks for a script tag called type of Blazor boot. We'll see all this in a moment. It'll be less vague. It'll make more sense, I promise. And that has to be in a index.html, which is served from the www root folder of your application. At runtime, this is swapped out for blazor.js, which calls mono.js, which calls mono.webassembly, which creates your .NET platform, which then calls your application, downloads its dependencies, and runs the application. So that's pretty cool. I've just explained Blazor with Pokemon. Okay, so the non-Pokemon version. When I gave this part of the talk earlier on, I forgot that I hadn't opened some of the folders in this view here. Where's my mouse gone? There it is. So in this view here, I needed some of these folders open. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to switch to Rider. I'm going to hope that the text is big enough. I don't think I set that yet. And then we're going to talk through it. Okay. So if I come out of this, I go into Rider, and of course the text isn't big enough. So let's do this really quickly. Let's set this, override this to be size 18, and you should look at that. Brilliant. Look at that. Lovely. Right. Okay. So welcome to Blazor. So Blazor is an application that I built in .NET Core with Blazor. And I'll talk you through the code, but we'll start with the startup.cs. So I have a server which serves my app, and I have a shared class library, which is really useful because now with Blazor, one of the benefits is that you no longer have to have a set of C# objects and TypeScript or JavaScript objects and keep them in synchronization. So keep them synchronized because the server, if you want it to serve your API, can serve the exact same C# objects that your client reads. So you don't have to keep anything in sync. It is automatically in sync. So let's have a look at startup.cs. Hopefully the code in this side is, of course it's not. Let me see if I can quickly make this bigger. Oh, I have a zoom button. Nope, that is search. Right. Let's do this really quickly. So let's do editor, font, and then we'll go 18 because I don't mind if it's too big for me, but you all need to be able to read it. So you can see here that I have in my configure here in my configure method, I've got use Blazor of type client.program. This client.program here, I wonder whether it'll work actually. Right, so I'm getting syntax errors. I don't know whether you can tell. And the reason I'm getting syntax errors is because Rider doesn't support Blazor yet. So if I go to declaration here, did it work? Yes, it did. You will see that we are now, if I hover over this, we are pokeblazor.client. Let me go full screen and you can see. Right, we are pokeblazor.client, and what we do here is we add, so HTTP and DOM stuff, you need some kind of state behind it, don't you? Because HTTP is stateless. JavaScript usually acts as the in-client state holder, or rather the JavaScript execution context does. So what we do here is I am adding a service to the browser service provider called PokeState. Now PokeState lives in this services directory, and it is it's going to be my state. It has a bool to represent whether we're searching or not, and it has an area to store the search results in, and it has an integer to store an ID in, and we'll come to that in a moment, right? So I'll talk about that in a moment. But what the most important thing is, what we do is Blazor requires you to add components. Now, these are Blazor components. I'm talking through a lot of this now, and it's getting very technical. Don't worry, I'll talk about it a little bit more in more detail in a moment, right? So we have this body here. We're saying find the tag called body in our index.html, which I will show you here. So do you remember I said we have this Blazor boot? Yep. Ignore this. This is me adding semantic UI. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's the UI I chose. You can add whatever you want. Blazor boot, right? That's then swapped out for Blazor, which .js, which loads mono.js, which loads the WebAssembly, which loads the mono environment, which then loads your compiled.NET library, right? So whilst all of that is happening, we can put anything between these two, between this open and closed body tag. As soon as that has finished, i.e. as soon as your .NET binary is loaded, then what happens is that body is then swapped out for this main component, right? And you might be wondering what's main and why can't it find it. If I hover over, again, Rider does not support Blazor at the time that I've made this video, right? The main component is this main.cshtml. Now, we're about to see razor pages like syntax, and I'll come back to what all of this means when I get to it. But basically, when the Blazor app finishes booting, this is what is injected into the DOM. All of this is converted to HTML and injected into the DOM. That's kind of a lie to children, but it will do for now, based on what we're saying, right? So, and that's where our app starts. So if I go back to my slides and I potentially lose my, there we go, right. So I've gone back to my slides. Hopefully you all saw that. If you didn't, then that's a shame. So if we have a look at the process, so from left to right, we have the browser, the JavaScript execution context, we've got mono.js and blazor.js, we've got WebAssembly, we've got Microsoft.NET, the .NET framework that gets created, the app that I created, I'm representing that with Game Freak, there's a lot of Pokemon references so far, and the Blazor runtime environment, and me as a user. Hopefully you can see these things. As a user, I click some element that is represented by my application. The message is bounced between these three things here until something happens on screen that requires a refresh, at which point the message is passed from here down to Chrome to then redraw the DOM, and then we come back up here, and then I as a user can then do some things, right? Okay. So before we get any further, I need to issue a very important warning, and that is, before ASP.NET Core 2.1 Preview 1, there was no tree shaking, no IL shaking. I'll come on to what that means in a minute. But it meant that Blazor apps were huge, right? How huge, you might ask? Well, there's a certain Whois example which loads on my machine and took 40 seconds to load, and it transferred 16 megabytes of data. You can see that here. When I loaded this earlier on a slower Wi-Fi network with a slower Wi-Fi card and sat behind a VPN, it took 70 seconds to load, during which time all we saw was the word loading in the top left hand corner of the screen, because, you know, that's the default. But after .NET Core Preview 2.1 Preview 1, we now have IL shaking. This is intermediary language shaking, which means that Blazor apps and other .NET apps and, well, .NET Core apps are now actually quite small. So let's talk about what IL shaking is. So IL shaking is really clever. I've said bloody clever there. That probably means that this video is going to be content tagged. Oh well. What it does is it looks at different DLLs, it rebuilds them and removes the code that you're not calling, and then serves them as if they are full DLLs. So an example is this really badly drawn image here, newtonsoft.json, right? I've included 4 methods, you can see them along the bottom: deserialize objects, serialize objects, read as int, and read as string. Now, normally, let's be honest, 90% of the time that we're using Newtonsoft.json, especially in a web app, we are only ever going to be using deserialize object and serialize object, either to serialize it to send it down the wire, or deserialize it to bring it back off of the wire. So what IL shaking does is it looks at your code and goes, you're not using any of those classes, any of those methods. So how about I recompile it and just give you that method, because that's all you're using, so you don't end up with any of this code, which means that your version of Newtonsoft JSON drops from 14 megs as a download to about 800 kilobytes. Still pretty big, but a huge saving from 14 megabytes. There's nothing wrong with Newtonsoft.json. It does a lot of stuff, and that's fine. But it also means that it's massive. When you're running it on the server, it's not a problem. But when you're sending those DLLs down the wire to the client, it is a problem. So what about the UI? Right. So the UI uses a thing called Blazor components, which look a lot like Razor and are dealt with in the same way that tag helpers and Angular/React/Vue/insert your JavaScript UI framework of choice here handle their components. And you can see on screen here, this is an example of what a Blazor component looks like. Now, last week, for the benefit of everyone, that was the 8th of April. There was an ASP.NET Core stand-up, so that would have been the Friday. So we're talking the 2nd of April, I think. The 3rd of April, 2nd of April, 3rd of April. I've got a link. Check the show notes. There was an ASP.NET Core stand-up. I said it earlier on in the timeline, actually. So well done me for paying attention to myself. There was an ASP.NET Core stand-up with Steve Sanderson and I nearly said Brandon Sanderson. Then that's not the right person. That's a guy who writes books. That's because I'm reading through a bunch of his books recently. Dan Roth and Steve Sanderson. I asked, because you can, they present a show live, and you can ask via the chat a bunch of questions. You can ask whatever you want, and they will answer it for you, either in the chat or on the video stream. So I asked, Blazor components look a lot like Razor components, Razor page stuff, tag helpers. Are they the same? So I just want to introduce you really quickly to Dan Roth and Steve Sanderson. Dan Roth is the Senior Program Manager of ASP.NET. Is technically, I don't know how this works, but that sentence might not be right. I think he's Steve Sanderson's boss, and that's Steve Sanderson. He invented Knockout.js, and he does a lot of stuff for the ASP.NET team. I don't wish to dumb down what these guys do, because they do a lot of very important work. So, during the ASP.NET stand-up, I asked, the Blazor components look a lot like Razor pages. Are they the same? At which point, Dan Roth answered with this, which is a huge amount of text, right? Absolutely huge. And my face is in the way of you reading most of it. Check the show notes for a link to the slides so you can read the whole text, or go and watch the video because it is amazing. But I've highlighted in bold the important bits, right? Essentially, the Blazor runtime generates a rendering tree the first time it runs. And as you start to interact with it, you tell it that you tell Blazor, I did this when I gave the talk, you tell Blazor, I've made a change, or the code has made a change, at which point Blazor then goes, right, all of you components, here's the state, render yourselves. And then it takes a diff of the new render tree against the previous render tree, then passes a message to the DOM to only update the things that have changed. You'll see a better version of this as we go through it. But yes, basically it only changes the DOM to add or remove things that have changed, which is fantastic. I mean, it's kind of how Angular does it as well, and React and all of these things, but that's really cool, right? So we're about to get super technical. We're not really. I mean, yeah, we are, but don't worry. Hopefully you'll understand what I'm talking about as I go through this, right? So here's my Blazor component again. Now, I'm wondering, yeah, let's do this in the code actually. Let's do this in the code. Where is my mouse pointer? Here we go. Let's do this in the code. So here is that same Blazor component. It's called random Pokemon search, and it has a property called onGetPokemon. It uses the state which is injected in. Remember we talked about PokeState? This is the state. I'll go into that file in a moment. And we're saying that set this property onGetPokemon to the value of the state's getPokemon property, whatever that is. What happens is, at runtime, this gets swapped out for full let me try that again. At runtime, this gets swapped out for full HTML. So if I go to that component, we'll be able to see what's going on. Random search result? Nope, random search. Right, okay. So this is the random search, right? I'll leave this up. I'll go back to my slide. I've got an image of what it looks like, and then you can see, right? So what this is it is a bunch of HTML and some functions. Anyone who's ever done web forms might be having a bit of a flashback here. Anyone who's ever done Razor pages will be going, that's the same. It kind of is and it kind of isn't. Like I said, it's not the same. It's not dealt the same way. It kind of is. But anyway, yes. Okay, so as you can see, standard HTML up to here, and then we've got this bind keyword, at which point my installation of Rider goes, I don't know what that is. Right? Just excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. I have a bit of an ear. I have an ear thing going on, and I sometimes have to clear my nose to be able to hear properly. So this bind here says, Razor, I want you to bind whatever the value of this input tag is to the value of this Pokemon ID property on this page. Okay, so it binds whatever the value of this is to this string. Now, of course, it's a string. You're going to start shouting at me, why are you binding that and calling it ID? Don't worry about it. We then have this button that has an on-click binding, which binds to this method, which goes to the result of onGetPokemon and passes the Pokemon ID in. If you look down here, onGetPokemon returns a function of string task, which is why we are going to the function. If you don't know some of this stuff with C#, I'll get some links. I'll put them in the show notes, or go read C# in depth, and you'll know exactly what this syntax is all about. It's a bit functional. It's a bit lambda-y. It's really cool. So let's have a look at what. So if we go back one here, we've set onGetPokemon. This thing, we've set this thing's value to the value of the state object's getPokemon value property. So let's have a look at PokeState. So this is our state. This is our state holding thing. So we have, what did I say it was? GetPokemon. There we go. So you can see here it is a task that does some stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on in here, but this is keeping our state held for us. This is a really, really simple Blazor application. It's not going to be the same as a standard application. When Blazor is used in production, it's not going to look like this. You're going to have as many states as you want. You're going to have as many things as you want. It's going to get quite complex, but as you can see from this comment here. But basically, what happens is you click the button, the ID is passed through. We set this boolean here, and we tell Blazor, I have changed something. At which point, if you'll remember, the Blazor runtime goes away, tells all of the components render thyself, and then it takes a diff of what happened and applies it to the DOM. So you don't have to do anything. It's already done the DOM manipulation for you. Then we do some validation. This bit wasn't in the demo earlier on, actually. And then if we can validate, we go and get some data from the Poke API. Pro tip, that's how this application works. It uses the Poke API. So it goes and gets some data from the Poke API. And then when that returns, because we're awaiting it, when that returns, we set search in progress to false, and then tell Blazor, I have changed something. Go render everything again for me. So it is incredibly important, it's vitally important that we have an event that returns an action, and that we wrap that in a notify state changed, right? And if we go back to the main component, which includes this, you'll see something that should make sense now. So you saw here, functions, whoops, let me just escape from that. I don't know what happened there. So we see here, we've got this functions, oh, I've done it again, look. This functions area. I think I've just broken everything. Oh well. So again, this is very similar to Razor syntax. You can include inline functions inside of your C#. You can, if you want as well, have all of this code behind. So you could have the CS HTML and a CS file behind it that would have a class, and it would have a constructor, and it would have everything injected in. But we don't need to do that because we're injecting it in here. So what we've got here is on init. So with Razor, you have, let's have a look, see if I can do this by reaching around here. You also have, so this is, like I say, similar to Razor pages. So you have protected, override, whoops, void on get, and you have on post, and you have on delete. You have on verb. Most of them are on verb async, and they return a task. So, you know, the same thing can be done here. So it's very similar to Razor pages in that aspect. But this one, when we initialize the page, we look at the states on change event, and we attach to it an event handler called state has changed. State has changed is a Blazor internal event that needs to be fired when things happen. So if you remember on change here, right? If we go back to the PokeState, we're saying notify state changed, so we call onChange.invoke whenever we make a change. This then says to the main component, that has changed, handle it with this state has changed event, which exists within Blazor, I believe. So that's how that works. And then when that happens, it goes away and does some stuff, it changes. So we then go, remember we go and do this search. Where are we? Let's go back to the PokeState. We do this search, we set the value of Pokemon search result, we then tell it we've done something, notify the state changing stuff, change your state, Blazor, please re-render all of my stuff, show it on screen. That's the house falling down around me, it's not really. At which point, where are we? So random Pokemon search results, yes. We've got main.csh here, so we've got random Pokemon search. So grey out zone, if this in search in progress is set to true, then some code happens inside of this grey out zone. You can look here, this searching, right? If we go back a second, right? Searching is set to state.search is in progress. If a search is in progress, this will be set to true, right? So if a search is happening, then we display a div that says, hang on, a search is happening. Otherwise, we display any child content that's passed in. Child content here means this Blazor component here, and then so on and so forth. So you can see how they all sort of glue together. So if I go back here, right, the reason I did that is because I've left all of this code in here. So that that first component gets rendered as the HTML to show these parts. You've got a text, sorry, that's just some shuffling happening upstairs. So you have a paragraph, tag, a text box, and a button, right? That is then, again, this is the same code, it's just done in plain text, black and white. I'm going to go, yeah, we'll leave these slides in, but it doesn't matter. That then, again, this is the PokeState, so that is also cool. So what this allows us to do, right, before I go to show me the code, I'm actually going to screw up where my notes are, and I'm going to show you Pokemon's Blazor. So Pokemon's Dex. This is probably going to break everything when I zoom in. Let's go to 150. Right, so the app that I wrote, that I've just talking you through, allows you to do the following. Now it uses the Pokemon API. The Pokemon API doesn't have a name search, it just has an ID search. So I can't type in Bulbasaur and get something. In fact, I've already got validation against it, so if you do that, you can't enter, right? There's some rules here, and that's fine. So if I go to 1 and search for 1, we get a loading spinner, it does some stuff, and then it then loads in some data for Bulbasaur. If I then go, also props to the Pokemon API people. This is amazing. The Pokemon API is fantastic, and all of the data you get back is amazing. So if you ever want to do anything with the Pokemon and you want to do it with an API, use this API, not this app. Well, please use this app, but use the Poke API because it is amazing. You can see I'm searching for some of my favorite Pokemon here. I got Cubone, and then let's just say I go to this one, this cute little fella, or this cute little lady. We got Pikachu, right? That's all happening. When I hit search, you can see it happen. So let's search for a different one, right? Let's search for this person. What happens is I hit search, it sets search in progress to true, then re-renders. Then when the search completes, it sets search in progress to false, and then re-renders. So boom, it's searching, it's rendered. Boom, it has finished searching, it re-rendered. And then because of the way that browsers work, we then set these image tags to the values of some offsite reference, and then it goes and gets it and puts it on the page, which is fantastic, right? So that's Pokemon. That's the Pokédex, the Poke Blazor, sorry, that I wrote, and I thought I'd show that off to you. This is going to go full screen, then it's going to come out full screen because I'm going to bring up my notes again. There we go. I'm going to drag that over there. I'm terribly well organized for this, aren't I? Can you tell it's nearly 11 o'clock at night? Anyway, so I showed you the code. That's Poke Blazor. So what do you need to run Blazor? I've kind of touched on this earlier on, right? You need .NET Core SDK 2.1.300 Preview 1, or indeed the .NET Core SDK 2.1 Preview 2, which came out, like I said, 2 days ago as of recording of this video. So we're talking the 12th of April. And there'll be a link in the show notes to get the actual information on that. If you want to use the terminal like I do. So I go like this. Oh, that's right. I misspelled terminal. But that's okay. I'll put my arm around this way, all right? So I usually go, let me change this. See, I've not changed anything. I've not got anything set up. That's how you know that this is live. I'm also going to move that terminal out of the way because you can't see it. Because my big fat head is in the way. So let's go with 18. And let's start a new one. There we go. So I go .NET new, and it's going to display all of these things. You can see here I already have the templates for Blazor installed in my .NET new thing, which is fantastic. I'm going to set this back to 12, otherwise I'll forget, and then in the morning I'll get a headache. So I'll close that, close terminal, go back to Google Chrome. Right, so I use the terminal when I'm on my Mac, which is what I'm doing this from, as you will have been able to tell, or my Ubuntu machine. When I'm using Windows, hashtag when I'm using Windows, if you get what that is. When I'm using Windows, I'm in Visual Studio. As of right now, when I make this video, when I'm recording this video on Friday the 13th of April 2018, Visual Studio 2017 does not support Blazor in itself. To get those templates to show, and to get the support for the tag helpers and all that kind of stuff, you need to install the latest version of the Visual Studio 15, that's 2017 to you and me, preview. You also then need to install the ASP.NET Core Blazor Language Services VisX. That's a Visual Studio extension. I'll leave links to these in the show notes. Once you have those, you can then load up the preview for Visual Studio, go File, New, Blazor, which is pretty cool. If you're on Mac, there will be an update for Visual Studio Mac at some point. Again, it's probably around the time of 0.2 of Blazor gets released. Once that is out, you'll then be able to go File, New, and do stuff in Visual Studio for Mac. You can open the projects with Visual Studio for Mac, but as soon as you hit compile, all hell will break loose. Your compiler will say, no, I'm sorry, I don't know what angle bracket random Pokemon search is. You're going to have to, include some stuff, and everything will go a bit wobbly. The same with Rider. I can't compile in Rider, but I use the command line to compile and run, so, that's pretty useful. So that's really all you need in order to do this. And the great thing about Visual Studio and .NET Core is that they can be installed side by side with other versions of Visual Studio and .NET Core. So you can have Visual Studio 15 0.57, I believe, which is the latest one as of recording now, and Visual Studio 15 Preview installed on the same machine, as long as you have the amount of hard drive space installed on the same machine, and it will just run. And they are side by side, they're compatible, they're not going to touch each other. So what else do you need? Right, I'm going to be a little bit not very nice about this bit. So this image was taken last week, so we're talking the 8th of April. So the information in this image is probably going to change by the time you see this video. All modern browsers support Blazor. IE11 and Edge support Blazor, but they don't run it at full speed. At least those are the words I've been told. I don't use IE11 or Edge, so I can't say. But yes, as you can see from this image, IE11 apparently is not supported. But there is a shim that gets added by the Blazor runtime to make it supported. But again, it doesn't run full speed, so users who are on IE11 are not going to have the same experience as users on Chrome or Safari or Firefox or whatever. So yeah, from a client side, you just need a modern browser and it will run and it will do all of its thing. So why would you use Blazor? For single page applications that need to be developed very, very quickly. Not just for this, but yes, for single page applications that need to be developed very, very quickly. So let's say you already have an API, like the Pokemon API, and you want to develop a UI for it very quickly, and you want to have it hosted separately. .NET Blazor is fantastic for that, because you've got compile time stuff, compile time safety, you've got the .NET framework. If you're used to the .NET framework, if you're not very used to JavaScript and TypeScript, then you know there are some things that will catch you out, and then you don't have to create a class that takes a C# library and synchronizes it to a TypeScript class. You don't have to worry about all of that because it's all taken care of for you. It's really useful, and it is totally rad and epically agile, as I've written there, because it's rad in that it is rapid application development, and it is epic in that it is brilliant for agile stuff. You can just develop something and throw it away. That's not what agile means, but I'm using it as an example there. So I am even building a blogging engine with it. I'm announcing it now in public, so that's kind of a bit scary. Am I mad? Yes, I am. Is that related to this? No, it's not. So I already have an API that represents a blogging engine. I just need to build a front end for it. I started building one in Angular and then fell out with that. So I'm going to try with Blazor, because why not? Because as far as I'm concerned, to display a blog entry, you go to the API, you get the blog entry, you display it on screen. You want the next blog entry, you go to the API, you get the blog entry, you show it on screen. Whether it's going to be, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Hatios, H-A-T-E-O-E-S, or whether it's just going to be a standard JSON API, I don't know yet. I'm still messing with it, but there you go. So there are some pitfalls. Again, so this bit is very specific to the fact that it is Blazor 0.10. This will change when 0.2 comes out, and it will change when 0.3 comes out. So the following stuff is subject to change. This stuff is going to change, right? Okay, so look out below, because these are pitfalls, right? So if you make a change to the client code, you have to shut down the server and start it back up again, because if you remember, I don't know whether I showed you this, but let me show you. So if I go to, oh, no, I need to be in my browser. If I go to Pokemon's Dex and I bring up the inspector, you won't be able to see this very well, so I apologize in advance. But, and then if I refresh the page without a cache, you can see a bunch of stuff is going by. Do I have a magnifier on this? Magnifier? No, okay, fair enough. Okay, but what's happening here is I have a request for stacktrace.dll and a request for PokeBlazor shared.dll, I'm reading these out as I do this. So pokeblazor.client.dll. Those of us who have done ASP.NET and ASP.NET Core development will know that when you hit save in your Visual Studio and you refresh the page that is being served by the server you're building, the changes are sent automatically down the pipe to your browser, because all of the rendering is happening on the server. Problem is, with this, all of the rendering is happening on the client, so you need to stop the browser, stop the server and start the server back up again to force it to rebuild the client application, to force it to resend, to reserve the client application to the web browser. And then you need to tell the web browser to refresh without a cache in order to get the latest version of the client application that you want it to run, if all of that makes sense. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. So let's go back to here. You can see I've got all sorts of notes and stuff. Let me go notes. Drag this. I'm so not prepared for this evening, am I? Right, so in the SPA services, there's this idea of hot module replacement. And with ASP.NET, there's this idea of you hit refresh and you get the latest version of that file, because everything's happening on the server. In this instance, nothing's happening on the server, it's happening on the client. So to get the latest version of the client, you have to shut down the server, restart the server, and refresh your connection without a cache, which means you've got to wait for it all to rebuild, you've got to wait for the server to spin up, and then when you refresh the page, you've got to wait for everything to be re-downloaded. Then you have to go back in and set up your state again. Maybe you were on a specific page, you put in a specific value, and then something fell over, or something didn't look quite right. You've got to go through all of that again to be able to get back to where you were. There is also an issue with Docker at the moment, in that wroot isn't copied in, and I'll leave a link to what that is in a moment. I hope that no one is offended by me saying that static files middleware steps in with its big Soviet boots on and the application falls over. So it's something to be aware of. But what is it that that Blazor can do? What can Blazor do? It can do anything that JavaScript can do. So if you want to manipulate the page, you're better off inlining some JavaScript and calling it as an inline function. I'll show you where to go to learn to do that. And so yeah, anything that JavaScript can do, Blazor can do. You can't do things that JavaScript can't do. So in .NET, you can say, give me a TCP connection, and it will give you a TCP connection. You can do that in your client code, and you can hit compile, but when you hit run, it will all fall over, because JavaScript doesn't have this idea of what a TCP connection is. Without that code, so what's happening is your application is, so let me go back to back a few slides, right? Let me go back a few slides and show you something, right? Hopefully this isn't flashing past too quickly. Let me show you something, right? Oh dear. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. I'm going to try and remember the number 31. Right, okay, so your application, when it runs, where's my mouse pointer? There we are. It's running here. If to be able to do anything on the browser, it's got to be able to pass a message back down to the browser through all of these levels to get to the DOM. So that's what the job of Blazor of the Blazor runtime is to pass a message through these levels down to the DOM. When and we'll come on to this in a moment, but when your application crashes and an exception is raised, Mono will do what .NET does. Remember, it's running a Mono environment. You raise an exception, the exception bubbles up and then crashes your application. In Blazor, it doesn't crash your application. Your application keeps running. And what happens is your exception is passed to the Blazor runtime. It then goes to WebAssembly. It then goes to mono.js, through blazor.js, into the JavaScript execution context, out to the console in the browser. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even if you're not very lucky, 7 levels of logs that you have to dig through to be able to get to the original exception at the very top to figure out what happened. That is related. I'll come back to another thing on that in a second. But that's so basically everything that your where is my mouse pointer again? Everything that your application wants to do, it needs to be able to do it in JavaScript. That's why if JavaScript can't do it, your application can't do it. So if I quickly switch back to the one I was on, yes. So TCP connections cannot be done. Other things in .NET that .NET can do that JavaScript can't do cannot be done. There's an extensive list. If you're not sure whether it can be done, don't do it. There's more than likely websites that you can put in, or at least there will be by the time this video comes out, I'm sure, videos where you can put in a .NET API and it will tell you if JavaScript can do it or not. And if there aren't websites to do that, then that's a shame. Exceptional exceptions. I've just gone through this. When your application throws an exception, it goes to .NET, goes to Blazor, goes to WebAssembly, goes to Mono, goes to Blazor, goes to JavaScript, goes to the browser. At which point you're pulling your hair out because you don't know where the exception happened, and the application still keeps running. It's completely different to .NET on the desktop or .NET anywhere else, or .NET on the server. You don't get any kind of visual confirmation at all unless you build it into the software. And that's something to be aware of. So like normally when a web application throws a 500 error, you'll get something on screen. You will have programmed it so that you will have a 500 error message appear maybe in the top right corner, maybe in somewhere on screen, so the user knows something went wrong. I'm just going to take a drink. I apologize. So that doesn't happen here unless you explicitly tell Blazor that there is an errors area and you need to write the error to it, and then you update the rendering context. So unless you do that, that's not going to happen. So let's talk about learning Razor. I kept doing it. I'm still doing it now. What a wally. So let's talk about learning Blazor, right? Where can you go to learn Blazor? Well, last week, i.e. April 2nd, April 3rd, whatever the date was, they had a ASP.NET community stand-up where Dan Roth and Steve Sanderson talked about it. I've talked about this video 2 or 3 times already. Go watch that video. It is amazing. If you're going to watch it with the chat turned on, and you'll see the messages come in as you're watching it in near enough real time. This is the time stamps that the messages did come in when it was broadcast live. Obviously, if you post a message, it's never going to be answered, but you can see all the questions and answers that were firing backwards and forwards, and the people in the community who were answering those questions, and where John Galloway, who was basically federating the entire operation, answered those questions. You can head to learnblazor.com. So this is really cool. I would love to say that this is a Blazor application. It's not. As far as I can tell, it is a static website. So let's just quit out of here. Let's go to Learn Blazor. There we go. So this is brilliant. This takes you through everything you might need to know to be able to learn any kind of Blazor. So let's just zoom in on this so you can see it. There we go. That's a little better, isn't it? So one of the things that you will need to learn that I'm not going to cover in this is dynamic content. So this is having JavaScript that runs on the page. JavaScript interrupt is what you want. So this is JavaScript on the page that you can call from your components in C# land and run, which is pretty cool. Excuse me. Another resource is Code Days. So let's go to Code Days. This is fantastic. This is a wonderful blog, and there are, if you search for tag Blazor, then there are lots and lots and lots of posts already about Blazor, which is fantastic. So definitely check it out. Again, links will be in the show notes. Another thing is Real World. So this is Real World is a bunch of real world applications in lots of different frameworks. I've just scrolled up to the thing, you've just missed it all. It's a full stack clone of medium.com, and if you don't know what medium.com is, I'm going to load it up now. I don't know what's going to be on the page, so I apologize. Let's zoom in before it finishes loading. So let's zoom in. You can see there's all sorts of articles here. It is basically a community blog. Anyone can post something. You can see I've already posted some stuff. Where are we? Stories. Go read my stories because they're pretty cool. They're all about .NET Core or they're about programming. So it's definitely worth going and reading those. Anyway, so Real World is a clone of Medium, but in lots of different technologies. So if you want to learn how to do React Redux, or let's zoom in actually so you can see this. I keep forgetting to zoom in. So say you want to learn how to do React Redux, or you want to do Angular.js, or you want to do Clojure, you want to do Aurelia. Those are just the front end ones. If you want to do Laravel, if you want to learn Cake, if you want to learn Golang, if you want to learn all of these technologies, go there. There is a Blazor one in production as I make this video. It's linked down here somewhere. There you go, .NET Core. So fantastic, right? And it's worth taking a look at. So definitely check that out. So we've got that. Right, I'll come back to what this is in a moment. Let's see what else we've got to go in the slides. And we've got one more slide. I'm not even going to bother going full screen again. So here is more Blazor examples. So I talked you through Pokemon's decks. I'm also going to show you Kojin, which is something which was written by a colleague of mine. Now I don't play Fortnite, but this is a Fortnite. Let me zoom out one more. Zoom out. There we go. So this is a uses a Fortnite stats API that exists. I don't play Fortnite, so I'm going to just paste a user in here that I got from Google earlier on. I apologize for this user. I'm not advertising for this user. This is a user who came up when I searched. So let's just paste in there, right? I don't know who this is. I'm just going to search. So what this does is it talks to the Fortnite API that has been provided by someone, and it displays all of this information about that person, which is pretty cool. I'll leave a link. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. Sorry, everyone. I will leave a link to this this app somewhere in the show notes. Definitely check it out. This is fantastically well written. I do know that the person who wrote this is making some changes this weekend, so it may, and again, that's the 14th, 15th of April. This thing may change over the weekend. I don't know. I want to really quickly show you the Whois client, and I'm going to do a bit of a name and shame. This is brilliant. It's Whois, but in Blazor. Sorry, I'm just having to move the camera a little bit to get you in because I've moved the laptop. So this is Whois, but in Blazor, and this was produced before IL shaking. The other two examples I've shown you, Pokemon's Dex and Kojin, were done after IL shaking, so their load times are tiny. What I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect, right? And I'm going to, oh, bother, that's gone full screen. Oh no, let's come out of full screen for this, and hopefully that will come out of full screen as well. Yep, no, okay, let's bring this out of full screen, because all I want to show you is how long this page takes to load. Right, when I do a refresh now, what's going to happen is it's going to do a cache-free refresh. So it's going to wipe out the cache. It's going to reload all of the source involved in this. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave it running. I'm not even going to talk, right? So you can see how long this takes to load, right? And I don't mean to name and shame this particular app, but this is to show off the wonderful work that has been done, right? You ready? And go. You can see it's loading. You can see some stuff has started. We're 4 seconds in and nothing is on screen. It just says loading. "15 seconds in, still nothing. 20 seconds in, nothing. 5 megabytes of data transferred, nothing." And this, again, I'm not trying to name and shame this app. I'm naming and shaming the process that existed before ASP.NET 2.1. And you can see, look, Newtonsoft.json. It's you'll need to go full screen to see this, right? Newtonsoft.json was 643 kilobytes, but the whole app was 16 megabytes and took 44 seconds to load. But what's great about it, right? Oh no, that took ages. What about if I refresh it now? So I've got Chrome set up so that when I refresh with the Chrome debug tools in, it doesn't have a cache. When I refresh without them, it does have a cache. When I refresh with the cache, it just takes it's the time that Blazor takes to boot is the holdover there. So that was almost nothing, wasn't it? Because everything was cached. So that's really cool. So let's have a look. And I think those are the last few things there. Have a look at the links in the show notes. Have a look at what other people are doing. Seriously think about whether Blazor should be used by yourself or by your organization. Have a play with it. It is really simple to use. There are demos out there already. There are source code that you can get if you go to, let's have a look. Right. Let's go to my GitHub and we'll have a look at Blazor. Let me just zoom out a little bit. Oh no, actually we just go full screen. There we go. Right. So this is Blazor on GitHub. That app you just saw with the Pokemons, that one. Let's do this again and get Cubone because he or she is ace. There's actually stuff in the GitHub that is not on here. This is a live version of it that we're playing with. I haven't pushed the latest version, so that's fun. But you can get the code here. You can clone the code. I've documented it as much as I can, and it talks about how to do it, what the requirements are, how to build and run, how to publish. So Joe Zack of the Coding Blocks podcast has been absolutely amazing, and what he did was he created a Docker file for it, which is amazing. You know, I'm not very good at, well, I mean, I am good at Docker, but I'm not amazing at it. Joe Zack has actually added this for me. So you can pull this down and do Docker run, and it will run. And you don't need to install anything. How cool is that? Yeah, brilliant. And he's also using the hacky workaround because of something that Blazor does. So yeah, have a look around at some of the examples. Take a look at Pokemon's decks. In the coming days, I'll be uploading a version of the Discworld Disorganizer. So if you don't know, the Discworld Disorganizer is an application that I wrote in Angular, and it takes a while to boot the first time around. It's using the SPA services, so all of this is rendered on the server before being sent to the client, and you can search for Discworld books and it will do. This is going to take a while because the API is shut down, but the idea is that it searches for Discworld books and it displays them with loads of information. It's really kind of cool. I'm building a Blazor version of this and it is a lot faster because it's all C#. It's better, it's faster, but maybe not better. I don't know. You can see it's taking a while to load, but that's fine, right? So take a look at this. Take a look at Pokemon's decks. Take a look at Kojin. Take a look at the Who Is example. Take a look at all of the things that I find and stick in the show notes. Take a look at all of those, and then seriously think about whether you should be playing with Blazor. And I think that you really should. If you're a C# developer and you're doing a lot of front end stuff, you should be at least looking at Blazor, because I feel like this is going to be a big thing over the next couple of months. I don't think it'll be that long before a 1.0 is released, if I'm honest. In fact, let me show you this, right? This is just so the presentation has ended. I'm just talking about examples, right? Discworld Disorganizer. You can see it's taking a while to do. It's probably crashed. Okay, fair enough. Let's go back to the terminal. And what we'll do is I'll give away some of CD code or DD. Was it DW Blazor? No? LS. What have I got in here? CD DD Blazor. There we go. LS. Fantastic. Is this the example? Blazor, DD Blazor. Oh, we'll run it. We'll see what happens. .NET run. I don't think this is the one I wanted to show off. We'll find out. Whilst that's happening, we'll go back to Tilda. Whoops. Go back home. I will list everything. Blazor, Dropbox. Okay, cool. That's fine. That's not what I wanted to show you, but so you can see how long it's taking to build, right? .NET Run takes a while because it's got a lot to do. It's compressing everything, putting it into class libraries, doing all the stuff it needs to do. It's getting launch settings and all that kind of stuff. So let's have a look. Let's go to this URL in the browser. So we'll go open URL. What is it? Which one is it? I don't know. Let's find out. Oh, fantastic. So this was the beginning of creating a Blazor version of the Discworld Disorganizer. So if I go Night Watch here, Night Watch, you'll see it searches the same API that Discworld Disorganizer searches, but it does it with Blazor, and it's probably not going to work. Is it working? I don't think it is. Let's find out. So, oh goodness, I've done it again. So, network. Let's go back. Go back here. Issue another search. It's not working, is it? Oh well, doesn't matter. Give it a second. Maybe it's going to do it. Let's do search there. Oh, bother. Now I've pushed the wrong button. Let's go back. So we can see favicon, favicon, favicon. It didn't actually do the search, so I've broken that. So that would have never worked. But I'm working on, yeah, favicon, favicon. Oh well, I'm working on a version of the Discworld Disorganizer, but with Blazor. So why not? So yeah, take a look around, see what you can find, see what you can dig up. Let me know some of the things that you find. Tell me what is good, what is bad. But don't tell me. Go to the ASP.NET Blazor repository. One of the great things about modern Microsoft is everything is open source. This is the Blazor repository. The Microsoft engineers who are working on this are not committing to some internal Git repository and then cloning up. This is the Git repository they use. So you can see everything that they do. So if there's something you don't like, log an issue. If you make a change and make a fix, issue a pull request. How cool would that be? Yeah? Yeah, first, you know, some kind of big shot programmer you are that comes along and you do all sorts of stuff like C# method registration for JavaScript. Wow, running C# from JavaScript. Why not? Oh yeah, these issues are usually, if they're started by someone at Microsoft, they are usually things that they're working on. Oh, look at this. Something that is open for version 0.3. Cool. Anyway, right, so yeah, take a look around, see what you find, see what you think. Have a look at Blazor. Seriously, contemplate using Blazor because it is cool. Whilst you are looking at this kind of stuff, head over to my website, .NETCore.com. I don't know, it's going to take a while. Head over to .NETCore.com and take a look. What's this? Oh well, take a look at the website if it ever loads. I think maybe my internet's dipped out. I'm doing this as a recording, not as an upload. Take a look at the website. Oh well. Take a look at Twitter. I'm on Twitter at @Gabrogman. No, I'm not. I used to be at .NET Core blog. You can see it down here at the bottom of the video down there somewhere. Over there. Let me move myself close to these things. Oh look. So you can see my Twitter here. You can see a URL for the website here. Oh, here. Check those things out. Let me know what you think. Have a play with Blazor and build something with it, because why not? Because it'll be fun. Do it. Seriously. It's great. So do that and then let me know what you've built, because that'd be cool. And then we could talk about it. We can maybe have a dialogue. I don't know. Right, I'm going to leave it there because otherwise I'm just going to sit here and ramble for the next couple of hours. And it is almost, it's quite late now. It's kind of, can you see the clock? No, you can't. Okay, but it's quite late at night and, I need to get some sleep. So until next time, I'll see you later. Check out Blazor. Be blazing. Don't be blazing. Life advice. Stuff. Bye.